Hello, my name is Greg Bathrick. I serve on the board of directors of the Broadband Forum. Welcome to another hot topic video series where we share the latest exciting Broadband Forum projects designed to accelerate innovation for service providers. Today's topic is helping operators drive new service revenue. There is a critical inflection point in the industry. There's no question about it. Broadband operators around the world have made huge strides to delivering higher speeds. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but this trend, as it continues, speed will become a commodity, and service providers need to focus on new revenue streams. Today, I have the pleasure to speak with Jason Walls, the Broadband Forum Broadband User Services Working Group Area Director and QA Cafe's Director of Technical Marketing. We also have Mike Talbert, Senior Director of Technology at WNC and the project lead that is spearheading our work on the app-enabled service gateway. Jason and Mike's work area is developing newly enhanced CP architectures that accelerate the introduction of new services while maintaining quality of service and home security. Welcome, gentlemen. Jason, please share the industry drivers that lead to the kickoff of this project and describe
it's interesting that you said in the beginning that it's an inflection point, because it really is. It's sort of several years ago, as you said about broadband speeds ever increasing, and operators always have that as the thing that they are doing and that they do well. But as it does become commoditized, we did a survey years ago that asked this question, right? Like, what are you going to do next? Like, what are the things that you're entertaining in terms of being able to drive new revenue streams? And the biggest one was really a collection of things, right? It was just a set of services that the operator is in a good position to take ownership of. Now, when I say take ownership of, that's because we always sort of joke here that even if an application is totally developed by somebody else, or if something that the end user is doing ends up not working, and it appears that the reason it's not working is because of the network or because of the Wi-Fi, the operator gets blamed, right? And so it is in their very best interests to take ownership of this situation, but not just from sort of from a customer support perspective, but from a real sort of, this is our brand. These are the services that we're offering to you. And these are the reasons why you should stick with us as an operator and upgrade your service to these things that we're offering for you, because we're going to make your experience much more streamlined than you would by trying to engage these applications like security and home health and working from home and all this stuff on your own through piecemeal things all over the place. And so because that inflection point happens between that reality that operators want and the power of CPE themselves getting much more powerful, which I always find is kind of amazing, because for a while there was sort of this push to say, oh, well, we're going to make the CPE be dumber, right? And it's going to just be this bridge that's pushing packets, and we do everything else in the cloud. And it turns out that for a number of reasons that the operators want things to sort of go in the opposite direction, because it is a very powerful computing device that's sitting in the home that operators have control over. It is aware of all of the network things that are going on, right? And it has everything an operator needs to be able to manage the subscriber experience when it comes to all of the connected applications and devices that they're using. And that's the inflection point that you have right there. Very powerful CPE and the business opportunity for operators to do this right now. So that all came to us, and in the process, we had been dealing with managed devices, device management through Tier69 for years, and then moved on to the user services platform, which is just faster, more efficient. It has a number of newer use cases and better technology than we did in the past. Some of those are around the usual support things that the operator was doing, right? And doing them better, like better monitoring and better troubleshooting. But it's sort of there being like, oh, wait, here's this really, really great technology that we could also use to finally realize the dream of the app-enabled services gateway, which is what we're calling it, right? And this because the power of the CPE now is the door has opened with, you know, with new technology in the realm of containerization, and our ability to already manage that and have the operator be able to manage that. You see USP, the user services platform, or Trio 369, poised as this sort of perfect technology to do this and finally realize the dream of that interoperable app-enabled services gateway. So what happened was, you know, a number of people came to us and was like, we would like to use TR369 to finally realize this dream. And we're like, okay, well, you know, there we go. Here's the things we need to do it. We started down on this road, Mike, I think, what, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
At least a couple years ago now.
Right? When we're like, okay, what would we need to add to the user services platform to allow the protocol and the TR181 data model to be used in this way, on the CPE to make an interoperable app-enabled services gateway? So that's the position that we're in right now.
That's excellent. Mike, could you dive a little bit into the details, provide the overview of the changes and how it will affect the current deployments?
Yeah, absolutely, Greg. So today, a service provider would normally go out, submit an RFP out to the community of companies that are out there, OEMs, ODMs. ODMs would come back with a response. They would be selected for a given project. They would then develop a residential gateway based upon a certain specific silicone, and provide an operating system on that residential gateway. As service providers started to look at additional opportunities, and I think the first one out the gate was security. How do we keep that customer home more secure? They went down this avenue on this embedded architecture of now integrating an application in embedded architecture. So we look at security as this first application. Well, guess what? They want additional revenue. Let's add another application and another application, another application. Like maybe we need advanced parental controls because we have, you know, a lot of young families out there. Maybe we need, you know, VPN services for people that are either working from home, or they need higher security for investments. And so you see embedded architecture unfolding horizontally, and with today's software discipline, you know, that means the residential gateway gets very fat. And I may be putting applications out there on this residential gateway that the consumer may not use or need. I may have a younger family out there that you know wants these advanced parental controls. I may have an older empty nest that don't really care about parental controls. So if I start deploying these services horizontally, not only does my gateway get very fat from a memory and CPU perspective, but I'm deploying things to it that really aren't needed. So when we look at the application services enabled gateway, there are two things that we're impacting into the industry. Number one, the ability to modularize my software and be able to drop in applications based upon customer or service provider needs. When I talk about customer, we talked about those applications a little bit, but from a service provider perspective, I may want to have a common interface into my business or operational services. I may want to have a new speed test server, as we know things are changing in that area. So it isn't just targeted at the consumer, it's really targeted at the operator being able to provide additional applications to consumers. And their consumers are not only their individual subscribers, but also their internals of their company, their business and operational support systems. So we look at that as one of the big drivers to the application services gateway. And we saw emerge, you know, a couple of open source consortiums that are out there, RDKB, Purple, in actually driving this architecture forward. There was another big challenge that hit that is going to be addressed in the application services gateway is time to market. And so there were two objectives. Number one, let's modularize the software so that I can drop these applications based in on subscriber or operator need. But number two, let's abstract the operating system away from the hardware so that I can very quickly move forward from one SOC to the next SOC. We see technology moving very quickly in industry. we're on the brink of moving into Wi-Fi 7. Of course, everyone wants that new alphabet soup Wi-Fi that's coming out. But wait a minute, I just spent 18 months developing yesterday's gateway, and you want me to start that effort again? That is about an 18-month cycle. So if we look at this architecture, number one, we want to be able to abstract away from hardware, so we have a common operating system out there, and that operating system should be transportable, independent of silicon. So abstraction away from silicon. And the second big piece is I want to be able to deploy applications out there to that application services gateway, so I can customize it on a per subscriber basis. And that customization, again, back in the form of specific applications based upon consumer need or applications based on business need. And what better way to do that? A few years ago, as Jason mentioned, we were looking at, USP as that next generation platform that was more efficient than the existing CWMP TR-069. But really looking at external services. How can we take USP and migrate it into not only managing external services, but internal services? Internal services in the form of these applications we were going to drop into the application services gateway to allow for this level of customization. The need is very specific. Operators are looking for additional revenue, and what better way to drive additional revenue but to drive customization at a subscriber level? Being able to give customers exactly what they need and what they're looking for. Whether we build for some of those applications, whether those applications come along as standard, but the ability to really have a platform that is now agile. So how does this benefit people? When we look at the ability to abstract away from hardware, big benefit to the silicone providers, because I can get their silicone out into my application services gateway quicker because I have a common software platform that allows for it. Benefit to operator. Now I can customize the device to the subscriber and to my additional consumers inside my company, meaning operational and business support processes. So I'm able to take common applications and now not have them specific to an application services gateway I deployed last year, but I can make this generic across all my deployed devices. And then number three, gosh, consumers ask for things. If it takes me 18 months to give them a security application to make them feel more secure, wow, and another 18 months to deploy another application, that's crazy. If I have this common architecture based upon USP with a high-level interface for these applications, I can now publish that interface out to the application providers of the world and allow for them to develop applications that I could deploy across any tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 operator that is out there in the industry. That allows them to scale, and instead of having deployed branches based upon a specific silicone provider or a specific application, now guess what? I have common architecture and a library of applications available to support the application services gateway. So now I'm doing good by my customer or my subscriber. I'm doing good by the silicon provider. I'm providing an application for the operator. And guess what? The plethora of application services that are out there can now be commonalized or standardized so that they're able to drop into this application services gateway. It's a win-win across the industry for everyone involved. Greg, I hope I answered your question.
Thanks, Mike. And just really quickly, next steps in the project stream and the timelines you're working towards?
Yeah, so, this is a pretty significant change. There is work going on in these two open source organizations out there. They are moving very quickly forward in creating open source solutions to do this. Why are we talking to you today? The Broadband Forum is all about standardization. And if we're able to standardize the application services gateway, it allows for this platform to be used across operators. And instead of operators reinventing the wheel every time they deploy a new device, they have a common platform. They've already developed their modules for both operational and business services support. So it allows them to really take a common architecture and deploy it very quickly in their environment and just customize it. So instead of spending their time on reinventing the wheel, they can spend their time on innovation and how to better support their subscribers. Now, so you talked about next steps. Wow, a lot of next steps there, right? So we've fundamentally defined the architecture of the application services gateway today. We're in the middle of specifically defining the pieces to put it together. We talked about hardware abstraction. That's a low-level application interface in the purple environment. It's a hardware abstraction layer in the RDK environment. These are both moving forward. It's our objective to standardize those so we can leverage both of those. The high-level API interface for applications. That is an ongoing effort. Today, we kicked off a number of meetings to make sure that we have that high-level application interface specified and standardized to support application services that are coming. I've mentioned a few of them, but you can imagine the ones that are sitting in front of us, things like Wi-Fi sensing. So there's work to do there. Security, gosh, security from the application services gateway perspective. But, we mentioned security from an application on top. But we need to make sure that hardware and platform is secure so no one can break in and do inappropriate things. So there's a decent amount of work going on. I think from a timeline perspective, we should get into, straw ballot or something rough. My target is end of year. But there is still a decent amount of work to do to get there. So if we can, get this in place, get the standardization in place by the end of the year, that'd be fantastic. And then one of the key things in, working text 492, the application services gateway, is to provide a guide out there to application providers and operators and developers so that they can use this as a guide from a development perspective. So I think we'll probably see the standardization part of 492 ready this year, and then the pieces to support, an application developer coming very closely thereafter.
Excellent. Jason, just to wrap up, what type of help are you looking for within your work area?
So the way that Mike described it is very well. This project ends up touching very many different aspects of standardization that we're all working on, right? And the type of help that we need now and in the future is always more participation, right? And it was very cool to see early on when this sort of started that many application providers, things you might have never, and people who you never would have expected to be interested in something that the Broadband Forum is doing, joining the Broadband Forum and coming and participating with us because they wanted to have their message heard in what the final design choices were, especially from the data model perspective, that sort of thing. So we always welcome more of that, always, 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 because it helps us sort of, I want to say get a reality check, but it helps us not design in a vacuum when it comes to this stuff, right? So that's a big one, and it also just having more minds, available to be able to help us do this work, and we then can go in and teach people more about how broadband forum standards work, how the TR-181 data model works, how people should consider putting things into the TR-181 data model to make sure that these things are standardized, so that these high-level applications are all speaking sort of the same language, so that an operator can choose the ones that are best for them. That helped definitely. And then also, just sort of proliferating the idea, right? If people really believe in this, which I think they do, getting on the ground and sort of showing that it's working. I mean, there's been a lot of strides in this, right? You've seen a lot of it at some of the trade shows, even last year at, say, Network X, right? People are already going down this road of having an app-enabled services gateway, right? It is the thing that you can sort of see when pressure is building and when everybody starts talking about the same thing, right? So, continuing to sort of beat that drum and make sure that we're telling the right story when it comes to USP and the data model, and getting it so that we become evangelists for the stuff that we believe in.
So thank you, Jason and Mike. This has been fantastic. So back to you, whether you are a broadband operator or a service provider or a solution provider, this is your opportunity to make a big difference. We hope to see you at a upcoming Broadband Forum meeting. Reach out if there's any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.